A few weeks ago, we told you about how Delhi spent nearly 8,000 crores for decades to clean the Yamuna. And it continues to be polluted. In fact, it's not just about the Yamuna. Every urban city in India has a silent story of a dying river. The Ganga still carries untreated sewage through dozens of cities and is so polluted that the Gangetic dolphin, a species endemic to the Ganga river basin, is now on the brink of extinction. And the Beas, near Amritsar, has repeatedly made headlines for pollution that kills fish and threatens drinking water. We've heard these stories for so long that polluted rivers have begun to feel like a permanent state, something we just have to live with. But here's a fun fact. There are rivers that were once worse, declared biologically dead, and yet have now been restored into clean, flowing rivers teeming with life. I'm Lavanya, and in this episode of The Climate Brief, we are looking at 3 urban rivers across 3 countries that were once written off and then revived. And we'll end with one question India can no longer avoid. For over a century, swimming in the Seine was illegal. It was 1923 when swimming was entirely banned, partly because the river was too dangerous to swim in with too many boats, but more importantly because the water was so polluted that it could make people seriously ill. After decades of failure and disbelief, 2024 marked a turning point. After more than 100 years, athletes swam in the Seine during the Paris Olympics, and by July 2025, the river reopened for everyone. Up to 1,000 people a day, swimming in an open river right in the center of a busy city. This is the story of a massive turnaround, because by the 1970s, the Seine was in deep trouble. Around 60% of Paris' sewage was being dumped into the river untreated. Nearly 2 million cubic meters of wastewater entered the Seine every day. Fish species collapsed from dozens to just 3. E. coli and enterococci bacteria mixed with industrial waste and urban runoff, turning the Seine into a health risk. The most romantic river in the world had lost its charm. But then over the years, the picture started changing. By 2013, untreated wastewater entering the Seine dropped by 90% compared to 20 years ago. Fish species rose from 14 in 1990 to 21 in 2013. And today, 2.4 million cubic meters of wastewater are treated every single day for over 9 million people. This has taken years, but one of the key turning points for this was a bid for the 2024 Olympics. One condition that played a big role in Paris winning the bid was this, that they would clean up the Seine and the open water swimming events would take place there. That single commitment unlocked 1.4 billion euros in investment. Huge underground storage tanks were built to stop sewage from overflowing during storms. Chemical and UV treatment was added at sewage plants. 180 houseboats were connected to the sewer system so that they would stop dumping wastewater directly into the Seine. Officials even went door to door fixing pipes at 8,000 upstream properties. The Seine healed because the city decided things needed to change. They set a target, made a plan, and acted together. Now let's go back to 1957. Post-war Britain, factories are running overtime. London's sewage systems were damaged by bombing, all dumping enormous quantities of waste into the city's loyal river, the Thames. By 1957, the River Thames reached a state it had never been in before. Thames had 0 fish species. Dissolved oxygen levels had collapsed to around 0.5 milligrams per liter. For fish to survive, they need 4 to 5 milligrams. The Thames was declared biologically dead. This was not the first time the Thames had had an emergency of this sort. This had happened before. The Thames had already recovered itself once, famously from the Great Stink of the 1850s. But this time the impact was even higher, as it entirely lost its aquatic flora and fauna. Fast forward to today, the Thames tells a very different story. A river once declared dead now supports over 115 species of fish, with some surveys recording around 125, including salmon and even the occasional seahorse making a surprise appearance. It supports 92 species of birds and nearly 600 hectares of salt marsh habitat that simply didn't exist when the river was written off. For a river that once had 0 fish, that's not a comeback. That is a resurrection. So how did a dead river come back? Again, one decision changed everything. In 1976, Britain made a simple rule. 100% of the sewage entering the Thames must be treated. No exceptions. That was followed by decades of enforcement. Biotic monitoring was introduced in 1989, measuring river health by tracking oxygen-sensitive insects and organisms. Floating oxygenators, the famous Thames bubbler, they were deployed to prevent fish kills. Since 2007, sensors have monitored water quality every 15 minutes. And in 2024, London completed the final piece, the Tideway Tunnel, a 25-kilometer-long super sewer with a capacity of 1.6 million cubic meters. That's about 600 Olympic swimming pools of sewage no longer flowing into the river. The Thames didn't recover overnight. It took sustained, consistent effort over decades. The Rhine flows through 6 countries. It connects economies, industries, and millions of people. And by the mid-20th century, it was collapsing. Salmon, once caught by the hundreds of thousands, disappeared completely by the 1950s. By the early 1970s, parts of the river were considered ecologically dead. Then came the final blow on November 1st, 1986. At Sandoz chemical plant near Basel in Switzerland, a warehouse caught fire. Tons of chemicals from the plant and those meant to stop the fire flowed into the river, poisoning it. And what happened next was unsettling. Fish species died for nearly 400 kilometers downstream. Drinking water intakes were shut off, and around 150,000 eels were wiped out. This time, Europe didn't look away. Within 11 months, countries along the Rhine launched the Rhine Action Program. For the first time, they set numerical targets, a clearly defined goal to be achieved by 2000. They cut toxic discharges of dozens of chemicals by 50%, reduced heavy metals by 70%, brought back species like salmon, made the Rhine water safe for drinking again. And all this happened in just 13 years. The Rhine didn't recover because of one big fix. It recovered because of a system. Number 1, clear targets. The Rhine Action Program set clear targets and deadlines. By the year 2000, species that had vanished, especially the salmon, were expected to return. The river had to remain fit for drinking water, and pollution trapped in river sediments had to fall, which they achieved in set time, as we saw earlier. Number 2, shared decisions. This river flows through 6 countries, so more than 150 experts from across borders worked together to achieve this goal. Number 3, fix the sewage. Between 1989 and 1995, about 13 billion euros were invested. Nearly 9 billion of that went straight into wastewater treatment. By the early 2000s, over 96% of municipal wastewater was treated before it reached the river. Number 4, continuous monitoring. Today, 56 monitoring stations track over 100 substances along the river. Since 2015, the net widened further. Micropollutants, especially pharmaceuticals, were added to the watch list, making sure problems were detected early, not after damage was done. Number 5, ecological restoration. So the final step was to rebuild the ecosystem itself. Floodplains were restored, agricultural runoff was reduced, nitrogen and phosphorus levels were pushed down, species that had vanished for decades, like salmon and eels, were reintroduced, and the payoff is visible today. The Rhine now supports over 60 species of fish, proof that the river didn't just get cleaner, it came back to life. 3 rivers, 3 countries, 3 different triggers. For the Seine, it was the Olympics. For the Thames, it was a public health collapse. For the Rhine, it was a chemical disaster. But the solutions have common threads. They stopped pollution at the source. They invested heavily in sewage treatment. They enforced limits on industry. They set clear, measurable targets. And they monitored relentlessly. Most importantly, they understood this. A river is truly alive when life returns to it. Fish, birds, ecosystems. If Paris could clean the Seine in time for the Olympics, if London could bring back a dead river, if 6 countries could coordinate on the Rhine, why can't we do it? for the Ganga, the Yamuna, or the Beas? I'm Lavanya, and this is the Climate Brief. If this story made you pause, share it. Because river revival doesn't begin with technology. It begins when pressure turns promises into action. And if you want more deep dives like this, subscribe to the Climate Brief.